everybody. Welcome to episode 27 of the FusionCast. We have a special guest with us today, Ram Parasuraman from our product team on the Defender side of the house. So Ram's been heading up the strategy around the Defender products. So hopefully everyone saw the announcement or was at least aware of the announcement in the press associated with it on March 2nd, I believe it was, if memory serves, in New York City. It was a really cool event. And Ram obviously played a key role in that. So we wanted to just do a quick update, kind of let folks know what's going on with Defender since then, and kind of just set the stage for what's coming later on in the year. So Ram, thanks for taking the time and joining us this morning. We appreciate it. So let's get right into it. The announcement event was really great. It was very well done, super professional. The messaging was great. I was actually, interestingly, at a partner event that day, the day the event was happening, and there was a lot of excitement, a lot of energy around it. So it was really cool. So now fast forward sort of to today, we're a month plus out from that. Kind of what's happening, what's going on in the Defender world that we can kind of let the market and our customers know about since then.
Hey, thank you for having me, Randy. Yes, plenty of excitement around IBM Storage Defender, right? Because as you know, all these cyber threats and threats to data are kind of top of mind for every company and everyone out there, right? So that's the reason why this has been a long time coming. I think one of the key things Defender did and that announcement kind of made clear was bringing together our different capabilities, right, around resiliency. Because when it comes to data resiliency, we have too many silos and too many different product distinctions, platforms supporting certain features, others not doing the same. Even within the teams, within companies, we have a lot of these silos where people fail to cooperate unless there is a threat. It's this common enemy syndrome, if you will. So I think that's the reason why there is so much attention on this topic, because it's pertinent and it's real. Every one of our clients has been hit some way or the other. They want a better way, right, to be able to prepare for these, if not avoid these, because I think it's kind of established now that we cannot totally avoid attacks. It's only a matter of when we get attacked. So that's the reason why this is, kind of generating so much interest. So since that announcement, the team's been crazy busy trying to get us to the first product GA that's coming up later this quarter, right? So I think we are working all in. As you may know, we also announced in conjunction with the announcement an OEM that we have partnered with Cohesity on. So both the Cohesity team as well as us, our teams here, we're frantically marching towards GA. That involves many things, right? Kind of one of the things, and let me break it down into three segments, right? So one is around the development of it. There's a lot of design work going on the user experience that we are iterating with customers. So we have a body of 10 to 12 customers that are working closely with us, practically on a weekly basis and multiple times a week, right? Kind of looking at our designs, making sure that we have the right placements. And it's useful for them, right? We are not in this, kind of traditional mindset of we'll build it and they'll use it. It's more of, okay, hey, what will you use? What's useful to you? And, kind of how do we lay this out? So that's one aspect of things. The second one is regarding licensing, right? So one of the things Defender does is, in addition to bringing these different products and capabilities, beyond it being just a marketing message, it's also a licensing union, right? So I equate this to something being like the EU settling on a euro. Similarly, we have Defender settling on an RU, right? So a resource unit, means of consumption of the underlying services. So we're bringing together these services that can all be procured, consumed with a single licensing unit, right? That's the resource unit. So that's that work going on there. The third is around enablement and readiness for GTM, right? Go to market. These are the field-facing enablement, some of the training materials we are going, as well as kind of, how do we enable our customers to migrate from their existing point products into the Defender, right, kind of the product line. So those are the three, let's say, major buckets of activity, right, that are ongoing now towards the first GA, which will be sometime later this quarter, hopefully May.
Yeah, so I definitely got the distinct sense in talking to some of the folks on your team that they're fairly busy, as you can well imagine, following the announcement. So that just confirms the amount of effort and the amount of cycles that are going into it, which is cool. I mean, it's a big effort. Obviously, it's a big integration and kind of orchestration effort around the different product brands. One of the things that struck me when we made the announcement, and you just kind of alluded to it, is This kind of countervailing message of the threat domain is getting increasingly complex and very sophisticated and very difficult to forecast and predict, and it's changing very rapidly. So it felt like, and I think you would agree, it felt like the product portfolio was unfortunately kind of going in the same direction. It was also getting too complicated and too sophisticated, right? So this very pragmatic approach to simplifying how we deliver those solutions and package them and take them to market and license them is going to be hugely beneficial, because obviously in an environment, in a threat environment where it's becoming more difficult to defend yourself effectively, you can't be using 50 different things to go try to solve that problem or kind of scramble every time there's a perceived threat. You need a simple, repeatable, automated, orchestrated process and framework to do that with. And that's exactly what Defender is. So from my perspective, as kind of a, design nerd, like that's very, very relevant to me, to me, even more so than the core technologies that make it up, which are great. The orchestration and automation of those technologies at that scale, to me, is the most compelling thing about Defender. Could you just kind of build on that a little, or maybe expand on that a little?
Yeah, I think, Randy, you've hit on a bunch of very, very key points that are core to the Defender concept itself, right? So as you mentioned, I think each of these point products, it's kind of this path dependency, if you will, right? How we got here is each of these products, wanted to do a little bit more in terms of, providing defenses. It's really 3 layers, right? It's around the very basics of control and key management, these authentication, role-based access. That's kind of at the base layer of this. And then kind of holding the data and managing the data that's being stored on these various platforms is a second layer to these, kind of the defenses provided. And the third is around, kind of being able to build a better mousetrap, for lack of better words, right? Kind of being able to detect some of these changes, abnormalities, what have you. The problem is each one of these products didn't know the other was doing the same. So, there was a lot of, let's say, duplication and maybe inconsistency in the granularity with which some things could be detected. So there was this need for a higher order, right? So it's almost like government. Each of these local bodies are doing their respective things, but you need some overarching body that looks at all the things they're doing and then, figure out what makes sense and how to bring these together. That goes to your orchestration point, right? Which is really, okay, if we did 3 things right, I think world would be a better place, or, we would be better armed against these threats. One is coordinated detection, right? Which is really figuring out who saw what when. And, kind of putting these together in a nice, neat timeline to say, hey, sensor A caught this thing at this time, B caught it at a different time. And this is how the sequence of events went. So it's almost like following the footprints, right? If you're a Harry Potter buff, it's this Marauder's map that you kind of go through the footsteps and figure out who's where, when. And that's kind of the better detection or shifting left the detection process, so that, yeah, you cannot avoid it, but at least, all the signatures are there. And all you need to do is look at them together holistically, right? So that's kind of the one element of things. So the orchestrator needs to ensure that it's actually getting information, aggregating these from the multiple sensors and looking at this holistically, right? So that's kind of one thing. The second is, let's assume you've been hit and there has been an attack and all these footprints are indicating that, there is a blast radius and certain amount of data has been compromised. Not all data is made equal, right? So kind of figuring out what's the prioritization of the data that needs to be recovered is super important, right, Randy? If there's one number this call needs to remember, it's 21, right? What's that 21? 21 days is what it takes on average for a business to get back up on its feet, right? That's a pretty long time. It's 3 weeks. Which is
an existential threat to many businesses, frankly. So, yeah.
Many of them may come up, but their customers may have disappeared, exactly as you mentioned, right? So which means they never recover from this, quite honestly. So that's kind of the second element of things, right? Which is kind of figuring out what's the data to be recovered, what's the prioritization and the order in which you need to recover it. And this will make sense to our Fusion audience a lot, right? The order of recoverability is super important. And kind of the third is exchanging and collaborating with security teams. This one is underrated, right? Because each one thinks, if you look at some of our peers in the industry, they all think they can do this themselves. But the problem is you cannot really do it without coordinating and collaborating with the security teams, right? The security teams are using tools in their SOCs, security operations centers, like SIMs, incident and event management, source, orchestration and recovery. So whatever is being detected and whatever the data needs to get recovered, this orchestrator needs to work in song with all the security tools that are already in place. because those are the people actually making the decisions on how to recover and what to recover when. So I think any intelligence we can add to that makes a lot of sense, but it needs to be coordinated. Much like, when we get attacked by a bad actor, we need to coordinate these offenses and defenses, right? To be able to better combat that threat.
Yeah, that makes sense. So Ram, this is a space that I'm very interested in as a certified ethical hacker. I know that attacks can come in multiple different forms and shapes and sizes. And particularly for our audience, can you describe, like with Defender, are there particular attack vectors that we are focused on solving, like for instance, ransomware or, some of the other ilks, that we can especially help our customers with?
That's a great question, Pete, and a good angle you bring in actually. So if you look at it, there are, in terms of defenses and kind of the sensing and the recovery. So there's two aspects of this. Recovery is probably, kind of one of the things I'll say about recovery, and then we'll go into the sensing part. Is a lot of our customers mistake disaster recovery to be the same as threat recovery, right? Now, recovering from a threat is a completely different equation than recovering from disasters, right? With disasters, it's all about predictable recovery as fast as you can, known runbooks that you have executed. Whereas for threat recovery, you don't know what you're recovering from. You don't know the extent of impact. You just don't know. There is no prescribed formula to recover from every single form of threat, right? Because each one is different and each one is changing, over time with a specific attack as well as, over multiple attacks. The last thing you want to do is to recover something and then just get attacked again. This sets you back even further. So it's like a touchback in NFL terms. So you don't want that happening, right? So that's why I think threat recovery is a completely different beast. The playbooks that you develop need to be coordinated again with security, as I mentioned, because each attack is different. So the team needs to huddle. They need to ensure that everyone's on the same page and then say, okay, this is our recovery plan. And this is how we avoid subsequent attacks. Or if we get attacked, this is what we do, right? That's kind of the recovery part of things. Let's get to the sensing a little bit, because this goes straight into your question of the kinds of attacks, right? Ransomware obviously gets the headlines a lot because of the extent of damage it causes and because of the pervasiveness of it, right? Because it's an external bad actor, and whether for marketing or for business impact, it's a very easy thing to agree on, saying, hey, we want to avoid a bad actor getting in, setting up a command and control, expanding their privileges, locking out our data. And, kind of not even, earlier, Pete, as you may know, it used to be, okay, hold data for ransom. A few Bitcoins later, release it, claim victory. Right. Okay, I hacked them. I got their data. I got paid. Great, right? Now it's much more sophisticated. The real target is data. It gets into looking at things for much longer period of time. These advanced persistent threats, a very advanced form of ransomware, where the attack may occur a year after the first command and control got set up, right? So it's no longer possible to have a black and white detection, right? Which says, okay, hey, no attack, right? Which is what many of our peers seem to, claim, which is saying, hey, I know how ransomware is occurring. Here's how I detect it based on some metadata, changes in backup metadata, and, here's what I have. But it's not that easy, right? When you get into the real world, it gets much more, intricate. So I think to detect something like ransomware, to know exactly how the data has been compromised over a period of time requires a certain level of depth and application awareness, right? So this brings us into some capabilities of Defender that go deep into understanding the application itself. For example, SAP HANA or Epic Cache, things like what our Sentinel, kind of capabilities do that will be rolled into Defender. So there you need to look at very deeply the structure of the data structures, the data flows, and then figure out, kind of what is normal and what's not, right? So that's going in depth. That's defense in depth for specific kinds of attacks, knowing fully well what the data structures are and how they flow. No, that's deep, right? Defense. Sorry, you had a question.
No, just real quickly. This is great, and this is very educational, and I think it helps people better understand, again, the complexity and the sophistication of the environment in which these tools are operating. And I think that's critically important, because you're right. A lot of the competitive solutions out there, things in the marketplace today, have that more binary view of the world, and it's not relevant anymore. We've kind of gone beyond that. I did want to ask one question with regard to, one of the advantages of being part of kind of IBM at large is that we have access to other brands and other technologies and other centers of expertise, i.e. security. I mean, we've got a world-class security team. we're obviously a thought leader and an industry leader in AI and machine learning and very sophisticated kind of discoverability and automation technologies. To what extent does that play into your design ethos and the ability to deliver on some of this enhanced functionality that we can leverage and exploit sort of other parts of IBM outside of our brand?
Yeah, this is why IBM is uniquely positioned to deliver on something like Defender, right? Because when people look at the vision of Defender, when analysts look at this, for example, they say, "Hey, this is an audacious vision that might take years to implement." I think the first version of the product is coming out, as I mentioned, in Q2. We're going to be delivering, increments on a monthly basis. The reason we are able to do that is because we're blessed with this wide array of tech and teams that we have within IBM. So let me take two examples to bring this to bear, right? So we have a specialized team that focuses on SAP and SAP delivery, right? So whether it's SAP on Power, SAP HANA, HANA on Power, whatever else, right? R2. We have teams that completely understand what it takes to implement SAP, and therefore we are able to go deep, right? When it comes to that application, it's super significant to our large enterprises. So this defense in depth cannot be crafted unless you have that understanding of the application. And we have that with our teams that do this for a living, right? Our consulting teams, as well as our product teams on SAP, they have dealt with some of the largest Fortune 5 companies, right? Fortune 550, whatever, 100. You keep taking the pyramid there. But so that kind of awareness of the application is something we're able to bring in. We're able to prioritize the applications because, again, we have a good idea of which applications are susceptible to attack. Where is it easier for the bad actor to place that command and control? So that's one element of what we have within IBM. The second is IBM security, as you correctly mentioned, right? If you take our X-Force teams, these teams have incident responders that look at these threats on a daily basis, right? They're responding to threats. They are almost like emergency responders. So when you speak to some of our X-Force teams, and maybe we can have a call with some of them in future episodes, episode 35, let's say, right? So there, what you see is what they go through in trying to get customers back up and running is much more intricate than just an automated easy button that you press and say recover, right, from a threat. Many of our competitors and many of our people in the space desire that outcome, but there is no way an enterprise actually trusts such an easy button because you just don't know what the end state will be and how susceptible you'll be after that. So this needs a stepping through. It's like an assisted AI exercise, right, where you need to teach the model how to go before it actually goes and does things by itself. Yeah. I think that's what we figure out with X-Force teams and their expertise in kind of helping companies come back up. It's always a mix of these people that are on the ground recovering data, piecing together, this subset of data from source A or copy A, and then so much from copy B, bring them together, test it before you recover.
I think there's an analog here with OpenShift, right? We talk a lot about how OpenShift was born out of the need to automate and orchestrate containers at scale. I mean, that's kind of why Kubernetes and subsequently OpenShift came to be, right? And I think we're at that same inflection point in the security and threat detection and recovery space, right? Because it's getting more complicated, it's getting bigger, it's getting more, broadly scaled. So the tooling and the instrumentation and the solutions designed to deal with it have to be up to the task, and they have to evolve to be up to the task. So I think it's kind of an interesting parallel in my view.
That's a great view. In fact, you've almost done what an ML algorithm would do, right? And you mentioned ML exactly. AI. A lot of these parallel, right? Now, I think the other thing, Randy, if I can quickly allude to, you talked about AI, right? I think AI is getting a lot of buzz, ChatGPT or otherwise. Sure. But AI has a very practical application in security because there's no way a pair of eyes, right? No matter how sharp those eyes are, there's no way a human eye catches all of these things. No way it puts these together. That's why I think both custom-built models to specifically look for certain things, as well as generic models that look wide across the different areas, right, of sensors, whether it's network detection, endpoint, in this case, data detection, right? These need to come together and say, hey, your network got intruded. You had an intrusion in your network. An endpoint got compromised. You have data that's sitting in there that's accessible to both the network and the endpoint. And that data is classified as highly sensitive, right? So I think when these things come together, you're suddenly, you're able to come up with a much better action plan that says, hey, at all costs, defend that data, kind of put in the clamps, the locks. It may inconvenience our internal users, but that's secondary compared to data getting stolen.
Sure.
And then kind of figure out what the root cause is, and kind of isolate that network issue, change the ports or whatever else you do there. And then figure out what to do with the endpoint. Should we replace the endpoint? Should we change the user credentials? And then kind of do safeguard the data and bring it back safely. Right. So I think these are things that come together that an ML algorithm would catch while you're asleep, right? And then when you wake up, you have an action plan and you're able to act upon that.
Yeah, exactly right. Cool. All right. I don't know, Pete, any final questions, parting thoughts? This is a great discussion. I mean, really, this is an incredibly interesting topic, obviously, for good and bad reasons, obviously. But I think, I'm very excited about the fact that we're, I think really for the first time, we're bringing together the thought leadership, the, vast and deep portfolio of IP that we have at IBM to bear on this problem, which is pretty significant. So I think this is huge. It's a really exciting, space. It's really exciting to watch the progress, and your team is doing just an amazing job and pushing things forward.
Hey, Randy, if I can just make one closing comment.
Sure.
I think, we mentioned and talked a lot about IBM here. But the key thing is when it comes to resilience and threat defense, right? It's a team sport.
Sure.
No matter how big IBM is or, how savvy and cool our technologies are, there are entrenched deep best of breed security technologies out there in the ecosystem, right? When it comes to the recovery side or the detection side, there's a breadth of different technologies that need to come together to fight the bad actors. And therefore, Defender on its very root, one of the key founding or design principles of Defender is that from day one, it doesn't assume anything or it doesn't expect to replace any existing technologies, right? So it's kind of built on top of what's deployed.
Really good point.
Intelligence at the end of it, right? Good ideas can come from anywhere, as we all say, right? So similarly, threat intelligence can come in from any deployed source, and we need to be able to use those and leverage them to be able to craft a better defense, right? So I think
great point.
A lot of BPs, business partners we have, as well as third parties that we will be integrating with as part of Defender, whether it's providing classification, whether it's providing scanning for vulnerabilities or malware, providing clean rooms to test, kind of your recovery image or golden images. Those are all kinds of things, across the data lifecycle. We have good length of partnerships, right, that we need for this to be successful. A large bank, for example, has spent decades standardizing some technologies. We're not going to replace those. We have to work with them.
That's a really good point, and I should have mentioned it, and I completely forgot that this is also a very, very compelling ecosystem narrative, right? Because for exactly the reasons you described, there are pockets of expertise and other solutions and capabilities, and frankly, a lot of these things are fairly sticky, right? To your point, once they're brought in-house and institutionalized in production, it's not easy to replace them, right? And so the goal isn't to replace them; it's to go in and augment and add value and sort of elevate to the meta level, I guess, for lack of a better term. So that's a really, really good point. I'm glad you brought that up. So this is great. As I said, this has been a really, really useful discussion. I think, the market, the industry, the world is hungry for better solutions, better detection, prevention, recovery solutions. Your team is doing amazing engineering and design work. I love the fact that we're collaborating on a daily basis with, the constituents to ensure that we have a good, user experience and that it, encompasses the expertise and the expectations of kind of our end users. So I think that's really cool. So thank you, Ram, for taking the time. I know you're a busy guy, obviously, these days. So we appreciate you taking a few minutes, and let's definitely get together as this rolls forward. Let's get you back on, and we want to talk more about this and keep the conversation going. So thanks again.
Always a pleasure, Randy and Pete. This is fun.
Thanks, everybody. Enjoy, and we will talk to you in the next episode. Thanks.